My directions said to pound the gavel 3 times, so there you heard it. I'm following directions. Okay, welcome to the meeting of the Dallas City Budget Committee on this lovely evening. I do want to tell you that there is some responsibility that goes with this job. Not my job, but all of your jobs. It came up at the Dallas Rotary this week that if there are any problems with this budget, don't blame the city manager. Don't blame the mayor. It belongs to the chairman of the budget committee. Well, I've got news for you. Everything we've voted on and approved so far has been signed off on by everybody here. It's a shared responsibility. It's not me. It's all of you. So we want to be sure you understand it. Okay, I'm going to ask the secretary to please call the roll.
Council President Schilling.
Here.
Councilor Adams.
Here.
Councilor Barrientos.
Here.
Councilor Collins.
Present.
Councilor Fitzgerald.
Here.
Councilor Jantz.
Here.
Councilor Verdon. Councilors Briggs and Shane are excused. Citizen members: Todd Brumfield.
Here.
Matthew Cephas.
Here.
Julie Kaprowski.
Here.
Laura Monroe.
Here.
Nicholas Peasley.
Here.
Jessica Schuler.
Here.
Rich Spofford.
Here.
David Weston.
Here.
Holly Williamson. Here.
With that, let's look at the minutes of the May 8th Budget Committee meeting. You'll notice that the minutes are actually comprised of both the urban renewal budgets and the city budget. So we have one set of minutes to approve. If you looked at those sufficiently, I will ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
Is it actually combined?
No.
Yeah,
No, it's not combined. This is just this
Just the
committee.
Well, the
Budget
only one we're
committee.
approving is the Budget Committee
Correct.
minutes.
Yeah, and we'll approve the urban renewal next year, right?
Correct.
Because we've already conducted that and then we're done. I move to approve
Second.
the budget committee meeting minutes.
Next year.
And we have a second.
Did we, I guess there's quite, there was something else that might have been changed on the minutes? Did that end up, it was like, there was the one about the date and then something else about whether or not the mayor was
That
there?
one.
So those were last year's minutes.
Oh,
So these minutes that you're approving right now are from Monday. These are Monday's meetings minutes.
And it's kind of strange because then this committee's meetings for today will be approved at the next time we meet, which is hopefully next year.
Yes, but we, on the minutes that you approved for the previous year's meeting at Monday's meeting this week, we did change the date. So when those get signed, the new date's on there. And we did review the video and we couldn't see if the former mayor was at the meeting at all, so we were just not putting them in.
Okay.
Okay. Let's vote. All those in favor of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say whatever you want. Okay. Moving forward, it's time to give this meeting to our esteemed city manager, Mr. Latta, to carry us through the rest of the night, I think.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get this rest of the budget reviewed tonight, and there's some recommended motions that have been drafted that we gave you in a memo on Monday. Chair Weston, did you get that advice at Rotary from our current mayor who's not here tonight?
No, it actually had nothing to do with the mayor.
All right, good. I was just wondering because he's not here, so.
It's
Maybe you
very
took it into
evident
your
that he
hands to
isn't.
do something.
And I really resent that because when he isn't here, then my name will be the last name called. And it just puts me at the end of the line.
True. All right. No, Mayor Woods is excused. He's at a conference today. So, all right. We left off with finished up with the building inspection funds. So we're on page 74, and this is the fee for both the police officer and the firefighter EMS fees. So both the revenues and expenditures are on the same page. On page 74. So this fee is a fixed amount by ordinance, and so it doesn't change from year to year. So any increase in the revenue that you see is from growth within our community, right? So more utility customers paying the fee. So we're proposing to go to $240,000 for the police officer fee and $220,000 for the firefighter EMS fee. And those fees are different dollar amounts. So that's why there's a difference between the two costs. So there is a larger beginning fund balance for the police fee. That was due to some vacancies in the police department. Those have been filled, and we're drawing down this fee now with the people that are in those positions. On the expenditure side, there's the salaries and the fringe benefits for the police officers and the firefighters. And each of these fees support 2 positions in those departments respectively. So 2 police officers, 2 firefighters. And we will move different employees in and out of those positions being paid from this account versus the general fund, depending on where that employee may be on the pay scale, if they have a family health plan versus an individual health plan, just so we're always making sure that this fund is able to pay for that officer. And we try to keep a little bit of contingency at the end of the year, just so when we roll into the next year, we can continue to flex the employees in and out depending on how much revenue is in there. So any questions on the police officer and firefighter EMS fee fund?
Is that one set up so that and I know it funds up to 2 police officers, but is it supposed to fund 100% of the salary for that? Like if you had someone in there that was paid more than the people you have in currently and you like capped the fund out and went beyond, does that cause problems or?
So the way the fee was originally set up causes a problem because it was designed to fund a firefighter, EMS employee, and a police officer at step 1 on the pay scale. At the fringe benefits at the time, the fee was implemented, right, several years ago. And there wasn't any escalation built into that fee. And so, as you can imagine, as employees were first assigned to this fee over a couple of years as they moved up the wage scale, or their health benefits, cost more, the fee wouldn't cover that employee. So that's what I'm saying. We move, as maybe we hire a new officer, and maybe a police officer that might be paid out of this fee is maybe on step 3 or 4 of the pay scale. We'll pull that officer off of this fund, being paid from this fund, and we'll put that new employee in here, just so that we're always paying for we're keeping enough money in here to pay for those officers. So I would say the fees today do not pay the fully benefited 2 police officer, 2 firefighters, because we have not increased that fee amount from when it was first established. So it doesn't quite pay for 2 full police officers and 2 full firefighters today. But with the beginning fund balance, because of vacancies and other stuff like that, I would say that overall it does. But if we zeroed this out and we started with a $0 amount, collected the money, it wouldn't pay for 2 police officers and 2 firefighters.
And that can be changed, it was created by ordinance, but it can be changed by ordinance to create that? Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
What would we need to increase the fee in order to fully fund 2 and 2?
That's a really good question.
You don't have to answer that now, but is that something we could consider?
You can certainly consider it. As Committee Member Peasley just mentioned, you would have to go through an ordinance revision. And we could look at that just as we were going into COVID. The council considered that again, but it was just bad timing, right? Because we were uncertain how COVID was going to impact the economy and property taxes and everything else. And with businesses closing or possibly closing, council decided not to move forward with that. But we were looking at setting up this fee on a sliding scale and actually assigning it to a specific person as opposed to just a position. So that way we would say, okay, as that employee, employee A moves up the pay scale, the fee would be adjusted up. And then if that employee, left the organization, the new employee would come in, we'd move that back down. So we would slide the fee up and down depending on who the person was in there. So we looked at that. We also looked at increasing the fee to pay for more than 2 police officers and firefighters. I think we were increasing that number to 4. And the council decided again not to do that because we were heading into COVID pretty quick at that time.
4 and 4?
4 and 4.
Wow.
Yep.
Would this number change if an individual or a couple of police officers or recruit training officers and they're in the academy, which would add more money or cost more into the budget? Does it change anything?
It doesn't. No, this fee it's a fixed fee amount, and what we do to make sure that we always have money in here is, again, we move employees in and out depending on how much money is in here. That's a combination of the fee that we collect and the beginning fund balance. So, and if we're drawing that way down, so the beginning fund balance is going to get to zero, and there's a vacancy in the department, we'll just pull all the employees out of this fee, have them be paid out of the general fund, and then as that sustains the beginning fund balance for the next year, so then we can put officers back in there. So Cecilia and her team do a really good job at managing these fees and the employees to make sure that there's always money there to pay for them.
Do you get a lot of complaints these days? It's been around for a while.
I get zero complaints because I'm the city manager. But Cecilia, I know, gets some, and there are some people who just refuse to pay this fee altogether.
That was my next question. Do we ever figure out what percentage of people just let out don't pay this?
It's a small amount. It's not. I would say it's pretty negligible.
I think we kind of keep an eye on it. There's probably about 10 customers.
Oh, really?
So we're very low.
How do you opt not to pay that as a citizen of Dallas?
You just choose not to pay it. The fee doesn't go away, in my understanding, right? We have totals for how much they owe.
Yes, we know how much they owe. We just can't turn their water off. Like if they don't pay their water or sewer bill, we don't turn their water off just for not paying the fee.
So how would we, I mean, it's such a small number, but how would we, what grounds do we have to enforce that?
Right now, there's nothing in the ordinance that, kind of has the teeth to do that. So that could be something the council should consider as well. Again, it's a small number of people, and we do keep track of how much they owe. So if someone hasn't paid in, 10 months, they're going to owe, $50, $60, $70 for each of those fees, because I think it's $4, and they're both under $5, which is barely. So anyways, it's an interesting problem, but the complaints are very small.
Just for context, what kind of complaints do you get about the other revenue streams for the city? In order, if the city council needs to do something to stem a bleed on the budget into the future, is this the least complained about thing, or are there things that are complained about less? Where on the pecking order is it on the minge chart?
I can give you a subjective answer, but it looks like Councilor Schilling wants to talk about that.
The fee was instituted before any city councilor that's currently on the city council actually was here. And when it gets brought up every time, the city councilors get an earful because it's taxes without representation is what people call it. And so you're asking about what the complaint is. It's a hot button for a certain portion of our citizens as far as raising it, quadrupling it, and that's why we're going out on a road show so that we can actually do a levy, which is what the citizens, I assume, are preferring, that they get to vote on. And so they get a vote on whether they have it. We as a city council believe that there should be 2 officers and 2 firemen put on, and actually we think it should probably be closer to the 4. That's why it was looked at a while back. But we get the complaints. Cecilia obviously gets some of the complaints also, but as a city councilor, we get the complaints.
I think it's also important to be really clear here that a water fee is a very common practice, right? It's not like a thing Dallas made up. And also it really does kind of even the playing field. So rather than placing the onus of payment on property owners, everybody who uses water gets to pay it, or apparently except for 10 people. Everybody else gets to pay it. And because everybody uses our police, fire, and EMS, and we're blessed and lucky to have them. So I think that's another piece that the roadshow can really help highlight.
But it's not, okay, we gotta back up. It's not a fee on water.
Correct.
We have a city bill that goes out, and it'd be nice if everybody would call it the city bill or something like that, because we have a sewer bill, a water bill, a wastewater, a stormwater. Those are all your bills that are on the water bill. And so everybody thinks we're charging it on the water bill. It's not. It's a fee that's charged on your city bill
Okay.
for services.
Does Dallas do like outside water users and things like that? And they pay
They pay a higher rate.
High rate.
do they do a higher rate on the fee as well, or just the same fee?
They don't
pay the fee for.
because they don't.
They're not.
They're not inside the city limits, so they don't get police and fire service outside the city limits unless it's mutual aid. But they're county, so they pay for the water that they receive, and they pay a much higher rate than inside city limits ratepayers do for water. But this fee is specific to residents within inside the city limits of Dallas, because that's the fee that the council has jurisdiction to impose, and the people they have jurisdiction to impose it upon. Yep.
So, we know there are residents within the city that are coming and getting water because there isn't enough. So how does that work?
Residents inside the city that come and get water? What do you mean come and get water?
They get the big tanks still.
Oh, like the, so someone wants to fill up a swimming pool or something, they'll come and get bulk water. So we do sell bulk water. We sell that at a cost. And we just recently installed a new bulk water station, so if you want to see it, it's over on Mill Street. It's really cool. So yeah, if someone wants to buy water and they don't want to, fill up their pool with a hose, they can come down and fill up a tank. More people, I would say, outside the city come in and purchase bulk water. Those that are outside the city on wells that run dry in the summertime, they'll come in and buy from us. And usually it's not a problem. The only time it is a problem is when we're in drought conditions. And at that point, there's authority to not sell bulk water to people.
All right,
So and we can do that.
thank you.
Yep. All right. Anything else on the police and fire EMS fund? That was a good discussion. I appreciate it. System development fund. Oh, yes.
I just have a question about the bulk water.
Bulk water. Okay.
So isn't the bulk water for people in a drought time when maybe their wells
No.
dry up?
No. Bulk water is just water that we sell to anyone, really. That inside the city, outside the city, it's irrelevant where they come from. But to ensure that we have adequate water supply for our residents and businesses that are inside the city, if we're in a drought year and we want to make sure we have enough water for the people that are inside our city limits, we will suspend the sale of bulk water. But there are people who live outside the city every year, whether it's a drought year or not, whose wells run dry, and they're the ones that come in and buy bulk water. So yes, so it's not, it's a personal drought for them, but it may not be like drought conditions.
One last question on EMS fire. And
Sure.
Sorry, I just don't know.
No, it's fine.
Is the fee assigned for like per capita, per household, or what is the payment structure?
It's a flat fee for every utility customer in the city.
When you get your bill, there's a line at the bottom, after you read about how much water and sewer and everything else you're getting charged for, there's these lines at the bottom that just tell you that this is for fire or police and whatever, and the blankety blank dollars. And so it's very clear. Everybody knows it's there.
Yeah, and I have heard about the taxation without representation argument, and I say, well, you elect your officials. That's representation. And then they're like, well, that's not the representation I want. And I said, well, I understand. Maybe you should run for city council. But it's very common, as Councilor Collins said, to have a fee that supports general fund services. Sometimes it's specific to a specific service. I know cities that just impose a general fund fee, and they say pay $10 for general fund services. And it's well within the council's right and authority to impose fees for anything. And that's what the council chose to do. So this isn't, there's nothing wrong with this fee as far as its implementation or anything else like that. But yeah, the question I think that the council needs to kind of grapple with over the next year is what to do with it. Is it enough? Does it need to be more? Does it need to be less? Does it need to go away as we put maybe a levy or some other thing out to the voters? There's a lot of conversation yet to be had. But for now, for this year, this is what revenue we're bringing in and how we're spending it.
The bulk water fee, how is that allocated or itemized? Is there a portion of that or maybe a small fee to be added to that could maybe support the aquatic center? Do they use any bulk water services as the Dallas Aquatic Center? I know that was kind of a topic of discussion last week. to kind of help bring in more revenue for that?
Yeah, so the bulk water fee, all the revenue for the sale of water by law has to go to water expenditures. And so you can't take the sale of water and supplement it to support general fund services. Yeah. I like your creative thinking though. All right, we're going to jump on to System Development Fund revenues. And we'll get to the water fund later and we'll talk, you'll see where bulk water is lumped into the overall sale of water. But, all right, System Development Fund revenues, page 75. So we collect system development charges at the time of building permit issuance. So whenever anyone wants to build anything in the city, they get charged a system development charge. There are 5 different categories: transportation, park, water, sewer, stormwater. And so those 5 funds, we calculate the fee based on the type of development, and then we collect a revenue. So this year, the revenues are for transportation, $550,000, $410 for park, $720 for water, $740 for sewer, and $160 for stormwater. We do have large beginning fund balances for each of these different categories, and that's because not all the capital projects that we do that are paid for with system development charges are done on an annual basis. So sometimes you collect money in order to then accomplish a large capital project, years down the road. I will note, as I did in the description here below, that these are restricted funds, meaning you can only spend these money on an expansion of the service for which it's collected. So transportation is streets, sidewalks. You can't take an existing sidewalk, rip it out, and put a new sidewalk down using this money. That's maintenance, right? So that you have to use the street fund dollars for that. But you can use this money for a gap in a sidewalk. So let's say there's a portion of a street where a sidewalk doesn't exist, never did exist. You want to put a new sidewalk in, that's where this money can be spent, right? You want to take a street that doesn't have curbs, gutters, or sidewalks, that's how you can spend this money. You want to build a new street that doesn't exist, that's where you can spend this money.
Do upgrades to ADA sidewalks count?
Nope, those are maintenance.
Just giving this a new change?
Yeah, it's a different type of ramp, but it's still a ramp. So that's maintenance, you can't use SDCs.
Same with the street light on Fervilla.
What's that?
A street light on Fervilla is not covered under this.
Right,
Traffic signal.
right. So,
Can you talk briefly about how we set our SDCs and why they're not more?
sure. So our SDCs are based upon the, I'll just draw out an example to explain it. It's easiest that way. So we have master plans for each of these 5 categories, right? A transportation master plan, parks, water, sewer, and stormwater. So when we develop that master plan, we identify projects that are going to be constructed to fulfill that master plan over time, right? A master plan is usually 15 to 20 years, and we identify, okay, over the next 20 years as we build out, what are we going to need to do? Those projects have a price tag associated with them, and so then we total up what that, I'm going to give you a very basic model of how this works, but you take the total cost of those projects and you say, okay, how's that going to get paid for? A good portion of that comes out of SDCs to pay for those projects, and so then we do a methodology calculation and come up with how much SDCs are going to go towards each of those projects. And then that's winnowed down to, okay, with growth over time and building permits that you expect and all that stuff, like it's shoved in this calculation, it pumps out a number that says, you pay this much in transportation SDC and this much for park SDC and water and sewer and storm. But it's more complicated than that because there's also different types of uses will generate different types of SDCs. So for water, for example, SDCs are based on fixtures that you have. So a number of toilets and sinks and faucets. Transportation SDC, how much traffic is your project putting onto the street network? That's going to depend how much transportation SDC you pay. But overall, it's tied back to your master plan, what projects you have. So a way to increase your system development fees, there's a couple ways. One, state law allows you to just have a cost of living kind of a factor put into the fee. So you can increase that each year. The other way is to look at your master plan and say, hey, this is out of date. You know, we've need to add some new projects because we're growing faster than we thought we were, or in a different way. So you would modify that master plan, and then as part of that master plan update, you would recalculate your SDC methodology for that particular master plan. That's how it gets changed.
Sure.
And to follow up, because it's the next question you're gonna get asked, and are we not in the near future looking at our capital outlays that we need to do and revising our SDCs?
We are. So if you look in your capital improvement plan, you'll notice that this coming year and in future years, we're updating our transportation system plan, our wastewater treatment facility plan, our water master plan, our parks master plan. All of those within the next 2 to 3 years will be updated. And so you will see SDCs being adjusted as part of that process.
And it's just for committees to know, it's very important that the city does look at these, because in a court of law, if the methodology is flawed, the city's liable for those extra charges if it's above and they can't prove their methodology. So as a city, it's very important for us to go and review these on a timely manner and make sure those capital projects are in place and our methodology is current. And it has lapsed a little bit. Council's taking a quick look at this. Brian's putting it on our radar to revise this. On another note, not related to this, but related, the school district, if you noticed in the itemizer, put out that they're looking at a school excise tax. The city would collect that tax. It's not an SDC, but it's a way that in 2007, the state legislature flat out allowed school districts to collect up to $1 per square foot of every new permit and remodel, I believe.
So,
Yeah, let's answer it, Carlos.
So the SCC, it trickles down to each new home buyer, is that correct? So is there just a set amount, and does that depend on how much the value of the home is? If it's a higher value of the home, does that mean there's a higher value on an SDC?
I believe every single family home has the same rate. Is that right, Michael? I'm looking at you because you pay these more than I do. So I think every single family home has a fixed rate that we've come up with. And that does not depend on, the number of fixtures and uses. That's really more on the commercial side than on the residential side. And commercial includes multifamily residential, so like apartment complexes fall into the commercial category. But like single family homes, there's a fixed amount. I can't remember what that number is. I know what the number is in Harrisburg because I said
It's around $15,000 to $16,000.
$15,000 to $16,000 per single
house.
family home. That's what the fee is, and that's for all of them combined.
The only thing that really adjusts on your permitting is your permitting fee, and that is based on a square footage and fixtures and blah, blah, blah. And so your permits in Dallas are between, I'd say 18 and 21,000 for a permit, which includes the SDC fees.
All right. So,
Comparatively, how are we currently on the SDCs compared to other jurisdictions?
compared to the city of Portland, we're doing excellent. If you might have read in the Oregonian, their SDC for a single family house is about $197,000. So stop complaining, Dallas. No, it's no, we're doing well. The city of Harrisburg is a town that came from before I worked in Dallas. The SDC for that community was like $13,000. And that was really competitive with the cities around them. City of Corvallis, you're up in the, I think, $30,000 range. That might be an old number, but I would say that we're spot on, or probably even a little low. And there's room to grow, especially as we look at our facility plans and what projects are going to be added to that. You're going to see those fees increase. All right. On the expenditure side, so page 77, one of the things that the city does is we appropriate all of the money that we expect to collect, plus our beginning fund balances. Although, as you can see, each year we don't spend all the money that we have available to us to spend. We really tie this very closely to our capital improvement plan. And so you can look at the CIP and say, okay, in the sewer CIP, what projects do we have this year? That's how much money you can really expect to come out for SDC eligible projects in the CIP. There are some projects in the CIP that are not SDC eligible, so those would be paid out of like the sewer fund or the water fund or street fund. But we do appropriate all of the funding because, again, when you go out for bids and other things like that, you don't want to do it by project because you say, oh, that project will probably cost us $700,000, and then you go out for bid and the market comes back and says, no, that's $1.5 million. So you want to have the flexibility to be able to spend more money, which is why we appropriate all of the funding. But again, I've never been in a place with a fund like this where you have spent all of the funding. So, questions on this? Councilor Collins, I missed your question from before.
It's fine. I don't know what oversizing is.
So oversizing is taking a 6-inch pipe and moving it to like a 12-inch pipe, right? So you're going with a larger pipe, or an oversizing a street would be, you have local streets, then you have collector streets and arterial streets. Each of those streets get bigger in their right of way, so how big they are, how wide they are, and the different amenities that are on those streets. So when you oversize something, you're oversizing a pipe, you're oversizing a street. That's what oversizing is.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So, is there, can there be a short explanation for why we have a red line under Lock Rail Road?
Because Lock Rail is 2 words.
Okay. Just made it sound intelligent.
I know. No, I saw that and I was like, oh, whoops. And when I these summaries that are down below, just so you know how I construct the document.
Yes.
These are images that I cut off a Word document and then I paste them onto the PDF. So it carried across the misspelling of Lock Rail. Good catch. Did anyone catch that we misspelled vegetation in this document, by the way? It's misspelled in there as well. You can go home and find it tonight. All right. Vegetation has 2 E's, not 2 I's. All right. Let's go to the trust funds. So trust funds are monies that are set aside for a specific purpose, oftentimes through donations or miscellaneous revenues that come in. Someone comes and says, hey, I want to, give the city money for, X project. We would build a trust fund for that. So we have 14 total trust funds on the expenditure side. Only 12 of them are actively, or 12 of them are listed on the revenue side because they've either received revenue in the past or they're currently receiving revenue today. A variety of different revenues, or trust funds. So like the fire has the Harpy Bovard Scholarship Fund, the Extrication Team Fund, the Volunteer Appreciation Fund. There's Economic Development Fund, which doesn't currently have revenue going in or expenditures coming out. Parks Trust, Library Trust, Senior Center, Arboretum, Friends of the Dallas Aquatic Center, and then miscellaneous donations. On page 79 is the Shocker Trust. That was a house that had a code enforcement issue of someone who had passed away. And so we actually took possession of their estate and resolved the code enforcement issue, and then we actually sold the house, and the city came away actually making money on that, as did all of the kids in that circumstance. So it's the Shocker estate one's here because we made those expenditures over the last 2 years, but that's closed out and will go away after a couple more budget cycles. Anything on trust fund revenues? Yeah.
I see a $10,000 deposit from the senior trust. Where did that come from?
We're
On page
getting there.
78, it's 0000010K.
Yeah.
It's just a budgeted amount for this year.
No, this is last year. Amended last year.
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I got you. Yeah. So we budgeted it. We didn't receive that yet. So we thought maybe someone will give us money.
Thank you.
But
Okay,
we didn't.
thank you.
We didn't get money.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, Carlos.
Do we have any control on how this money is allocated or who it goes to? Or is it individually by each trust fund?
So it's a mixture of both, right? So like the Shocker estate, for example, the court told us how to distribute the money to the descendants of Miss Shocker. The Arboretum, the Friends of the Dallas Aquatic Center, they fundraise. The money sits in the city's bank account, and then they tell us how to spend it. So we have agreements on that. But same with the volunteer for the Fire Volunteer Appreciation Trust, we give that money to the Volunteer Association, and they spend it, and they give us invoices, and then we reimburse them. So, but there are others. Is the Library Trust the Friends of the Library?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a Friends one. Parks Trust, is that one that we have control over, Cecilia?
Park Trust, most of that is for payments for subdivisions.
Right, so that's money that comes in, but that's, the city would decide how to spend that money, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so
it's
that's an example
the city.
of where the city would decide how to spend that. But a lot of these are an outside organization that doesn't have the wherewithal to maybe do all the financial bookkeeping, so we keep the money here, but it's to benefit services or the community in some way. So that's what most of these are. The Park Trust is an example of funds that come in that the city then decides how to spend. Yep. Any other questions on trust revenue? All right. The expenditure side, similar to the revenues, you have all of the listed trusts there, and all the money that is in there or is expected to be received is totaled up. So this is all the money that would be available to be able to be spent. And again, depending on how those organizations decide to spend the money, we'll cut them reimbursement checks. So any questions on trusts? Yeah.
I see on the expenditures, we have a glow run trust, but I don't see it on the income, so where does that come from, on the revenue?
So you'll see on the expenditures, it says obsolete, historical information only. The glow run's now run by Christmas Cheer, and so we don't take any money in for them. Christmas Cheer takes that money in.
Thank you, okay.
So the same with the Shocker Trust. You'll see that also says obsolete because we've closed out that estate and the house has been sold and that's all done.
Okay, thank you.
So those are just here until we get through the any money that was ever allocated or spent, and then that'll drop off the budget. All right, let's go to grant fund revenues. So grant funds, last year was the first year we decided we wanted to stop inflating our budget arbitrarily by saying, we're gonna apply for $5 million in grants, and you put all that $5 million in your budget. And then you don't get, maybe more than a couple $100,000 and you look silly. So we stopped doing that last year, and we only put in here in the proposed budget money that we know we're gonna get because the grant has been awarded. Or we put $5,000 as a placeholder for any grants for which we have applied or we know we will apply this coming year. So when you look at the revenues, you'll see this, we have a Safe Routes to School grant for $5,000. So you would tell me back, that means we want to apply for a Safe Routes to School grant, but we've not yet received it, right? You go down to the Certified Local Government grant, $15,000. That means it's not $5,000, so we have received that grant award. And we know we're going to get that. A couple to point out, the parks grants, $570,344. That's for John Barnard Park. So we received that grant award about a month ago. We're very excited about that. That will help offset the cost of that construction and actually be able to free up system development charge revenues to be paid for other parks projects. So we're really happy we got that grant. The other small LGGP grant from the Parks and Rec Department of the state was for $14,355 for the Japanese Garden Bridge. We received that this last year. We're going to expend that this coming fiscal year. But it's $19,000, so that means there's another $5,000 in there because we've applied for another grant out of Parks and Rec that's not yet funded. As you go down the list, a lot of the other grants there are, again, kind of wish grants. We do get a Ready to Read grant from the library every year at $3,000, so that's why that's there. Yeah. Any other questions on grants?
Yeah, how does the city's grant policy work? Do we just fire at will at anything that we see, or are we just cautious about it?
No, we don't fire at will at anything we see, but we are pretty aggressive with grants. And so one of the things you have to be cautious with grants is, they don't fund a project fully. And so you have to make sure you have some money to be able to put towards the project. So for the John Barnard Park grant example, that project's going to be about $2 million to build the whole thing. So we asked for about 25%, right? And we got it, which is awesome. But we are aggressive in terms of looking for grants, trying to find them, applying for them, but we're also selective. We don't want to spend lots of staff time going after grants that we know we just aren't going to have any shot at. enough on the grant revenues. The grant expenditures looks very similar to what you just saw. Again, because anywhere where it's $5,000, we don't know if we're going to receive that grant, so we don't put how much money we think we want to spend. We'll do a budget amendment if we get a grant. So within the fiscal year, and we're going to spend the money. We'll do a budget amendment. We'll put the actual number in there, and then we'll move forward. But the grants that we did get, we do put how much money we're going to spend out of there, and expect to spend that on the projects for which we received the awards. Any questions on grants? No? All right, good. General long-term debt revenues and expenditures. So this is on page 85. This is, we took on some long-term debt to be able to pay down the PERS pension obligation. And we did this in 2005. It's going to be paid off in 2028. You'll see the money that comes in is from all of the funds that have personnel. So general funds, sewer, fleet, street, water, and building. And then the expenditures are down below on the second table. $177.30 this year in principal and interest. I note that the maximum payment that we'll make will be in 2026-27 for $203,761. Any questions on this fund? All right, very good. Now we're into the enterprise funds. Go to fleet management fund first. So we do have 2 mechanics on our payroll, and they take care of all of our fleet. And this is any vehicles that we have for any of our departments, including public safety vehicles, as well as any like riding equipment, so riding lawnmowers, other types of small pieces of equipment, fixed generators, mobile generators. They take care of it all, and they do a really good job. So we do bring in money for this. We have reimbursed services, which is money from other organizations that we have contracts with. So we contract with some of our fire districts, we contract with some cities, and so we do bring in revenue from them. There is fuel and oil reimbursement for when we travel around to pick up things. There's the Fleet Total Care Program. I talked earlier how the general fund was underfunding that for several years, which is why you see a big increase going from $121,000 to $200,500. But we get it from, fleet management gets it from Public Works, General Fund, and Building Fund. Sometimes we sell pieces of equipment, so there's $5,000 there. And then the bottom is a transfer in the sewer SDC interfund loan. That's being carried over from last fiscal year to this fiscal year because we didn't make that interfund loan. That interfund loan is for the construction of the new Public Works building that's going through kind of final design right now. So we'll do that interfund loan this year. We wanted to do it last year, but just didn't happen. So questions on the revenues?
I know there's a mutual agreement with Monmouth, the city of Monmouth, for servicing police vehicles.
Yep.
It seems to be happening, seems to be going fairly well. Is that something that adds into the funding here? And are we considering opening that up to more kind of city vehicles in the city of Dallas outside the police?
Yeah, for the city of Monmouth for sure. In fact, our agreement was with the police department, but I think it includes all city of Monmouth vehicles. So I don't think it would be very much to just say, hey, why don't you send us over some of your public works trucks or other equipment that they have. We do have contracts with other agencies like Southwest Polk Fire, Polk One. Yes. Yeah, Polk One, and some others. And so yes, we. As we build the new Public Works facility, we're looking at adding additional bays so that we can do more work. And as we do that, we'll be able to add in, maybe some additional mechanics and be able to work on a lot more vehicles. And so right now, a lot of, not a lot, but some agencies drive past Dallas to go to Benton County because they have a larger fleet program down there, maintenance program. And we charge $25 less, and if they don't have to travel as far, and wait as long, I think that we can get their business. So yes, as we build a facility that can accommodate more, we'll take on more. And you would see that in the reimbursed services line at the top. We're also proposing to increase the fee from $100 on the reimbursed services to 125. I think yesterday I said, or on Monday I said 125 to 150. It was 100 to 125. All right, if nothing else on the revenues, the expenditures, you can see the two mechanics are in the personnel services, materials and services costs that are increasing, parts and service for intergovernmental agreements that we have, and then tools. Each of those are kind of going up a little bit more significantly than some of the other lines. In materials and services, capital outlays, that $330,000 contribution from fleet towards the new public works building. And then there's a couple of transfers to the risk fund and a little bit to the general fund. Any questions on the expenditure side? Yes.
Just in general, does this fleet total care, is this just for maintenance? Does it account for like vehicle replacement after a certain time?
It's just maintenance. So vehicle replacements are put as capital purchases for the department or the fund of the department that it's serving. So you'll notice like in the police fund, there was a vehicle line. So that's where we buy new vehicles. Yep. Good question. All right, if nothing else on fleet, let's move into the sewer fund. So the sewer fund, this is a good fund. It's healthy. We have not raised the rates in the sewer fund for at least 3 years. We suspended that back in 2020, February of 2020, when we proposed increases to the stormwater fund, which hadn't been increased since its inception and needed to be to catch up with the revenue that it should have been collecting with the master plan. So, but even without raising rates in the sewer fund, with growth and other things, we're seeing that that's still good. So you'll notice $4 million in sewer service charges from the rates, $85,000 in miscellaneous fees that we collect, and $100,000 on interest. Someone asked a question previous to these budget meetings from the committee, why is so much interest? And the short answer is Cecilia's doing a really good job and her team at finding better investments. There's also more money that are in some of these funds, contingency monies that we're able to put in. And so we're getting a lot better returns than we have in the past. So that's why we're getting more interest, in case you were wondering. Beginning fund balance for the sewer funds, almost $4.5 million. Total revenues, $8.6 million. Any questions on the sewer fund revenues? All right. Not seeing any sewer fund expenditures. We have a number of sewer employees. We also have a professional services contract with Jacobs Engineering that they operate our wastewater treatment facility. So that's done by contract, not our own city employees. That's the professional services line that you see that's just over $1 million this year. So they have a number of employees over there that operate that for us, and we're very happy they do. Other expenses on the materials and services are fairly consistent from last year to this year. Capital outlay, you'll see the wastewater treatment facility, WWTF, capital improvements are going from $340,000 to $1.7 million. A large chunk of that is our UV sanitation system for the wastewater treatment. It's one of the last steps in the process. Is old, needs to be updated. That's like a $1.7 million project. So that's where that's where actually all the money for that is coming from, is just that. But that's why that's so expensive, in case you're wondering, the jump on that. Any questions on the expenditures out of the sewer fund? Yeah, Jessica.
On the equipment replacement, that seems to be varying quite a bit year to year. What kind of contributes to that difference?
On the capital under the equipment, you said?
Under the capital outlay, the equipment replacement, it's kind of all over the place.
Yeah, so you can see we've kind of consistently spent, between maybe $30,000 to $50,000. This last year we budgeted $209,000. There was, if I'm recalling this correctly, this last year we had one of the mechanical arms in one of the tanks at the wastewater treatment plant had to be replaced. And that was like $150,000. So that's why that was so high. We don't have to replace that kind of equipment every year, but that was why that was so high last year. Was just that one piece of equipment.
When was the plant built?
When was the wastewater treatment plant built, Gary?
2002.
2002. Yeah. And Yeah, and it has, there's still capacity to grow. Well, there's capacity within the current system, and then there's room to grow. We could add some additional clarifiers and settling ponds and stuff like that out there. So we feel confident that as we need to grow, we can do that within the land that we have. We also purchased a whole bunch of farmland around there. If ever we have to land apply, we can do that there. We haven't had to do that since we've lost some industries that were putting some pretty gunky stuff in the water. Yeah.
So the way you're able to fund this huge capital improvement is because you have such a healthy beginning balance?
Yep. Yeah, and that's another reason to, maintain good, healthy balances in your enterprise funds, is because every once in a while you get just a really crazy expensive project, and you want to make sure you have the money. What you don't want to do is, play really I guess, kind of tell your citizens, hey, we're only going to charge you exactly what we need from year to year, because then you're not saving up for when a big project comes and you say, hey, we got to raise your rates 60% this year. They're going to be like, what? But the city council has done a very good job over the years of just having incremental increases, 2 to 3, 4%. The water fund, which we'll talk about in a couple of pages here, we did some more significant increases this year because we are looking 5, 7, 10 years down the road. There's some major projects that we need to start saving for now. And the council had made the decision to do that. The sewer fund, just those incremental increases over the years up until 3 years ago, has made it so that we're very capable of paying for those projects now. So the council's done a good job. All right, nothing else on the sewer expenditures. So sewer fund's done. All right, stormwater fund. I mentioned earlier that we developed a stormwater master plan. It was the more recent master plan that we completed. And there was a funding structure in there which first implemented the fee at $2.50, and then it was supposed to be escalated year over year by about $1, $1.50. And it hadn't been. And so when I came here to the city, Cecilia brought this to my attention. I said, oh, we need to fix that. So we stopped the increases on the sewer fund, noting we felt pretty confident that that was healthy enough, and implemented a 3-year rate increase on the stormwater fund to bring that fee up to $10 each month for each customer. So that's why you see the revenues on the stormwater service charges going from just over $500,000 to this year at a little over $1 million. So that's why that is. The council also in the water fee, the water rates, also implemented a stormwater fee increase for the next 3 years, $2 per year. So it's going to $12 right. It's $12 right now. It's going to go $14 next year, $16 the year after that. Again, looking at the stormwater master plan, and we're just finishing the North Fork of the Ash Creek floodplain study. We know there's going to be some significant stormwater projects that need to be completed, which is why we're putting money away now to be able to complete those projects over the next several years. Any questions on the stormwater fee fund revenues? Okay. On the expenditures, so page 92, the biggest change you'll see here is the professional services under materials and services, dropping from $290,000 to $100,000. That reflects the stormwater feasibility study for the North Fork of the Ash Creek that we're completing, that was getting done, and so professional services is dropping back down to where we think it will cost us for some design engineering work for these projects that are in our windshield. Otherwise, it's pretty consistent from year to year. Any questions on the stormwater fund expenditures? All right, not seeing any. Let's jump into our final fund. This is a fun one this year, water fund. It's fun for a variety of reasons, but mostly because I mentioned earlier, the city council implemented some pretty significant rate increases on the water fund, and that applied across all the rates, bulk water, inside city limits, outside city limits, commercial, residential, they all got increased. So you'll see our sale of water was hovering just around $3 to $3.5 million. This year it's going to $4.2 million with the rate increases which were enacted. The rate increase that the council approved was a 3-year increase. So this is just year one. Next year you're going to see a similar increase. The year after that you're going to see a similar but a little bit lesser increase in the first 2 years. Again, the purpose of that, I'll talk about when we get to the expenditure side, but just know that we're going to be receiving a whole lot more water revenue than we have in years past. Service connections also are being increased a little bit because of those rate increases and the fee increases in the funds. Interest is the same comment as before. We're just doing better at our investments. Any questions on the water fund revenues? All right, not seeing any. Let's go to the expenditures. So I'll start with what I've alluded to a couple times now. You go to the reserves on page 95 near the bottom. It's the water storage reserve line. We created this line last year, so the water storage is talking about our Mercer Dam and reservoir that we have. It's up in the mountains, about 8 miles to the west of us, and that is where we get all of our summer storage water. And right now, it serves our needs. It'll probably serve our needs for another 10, 15 years if we had to. We might need to do some curtailment by then if we continue to grow the way we're growing, or if we have a drought year like we experienced a couple years ago, right? When we have a drought year, since I have an audience, I'll tell you why we do what we do. When we have a drought year, we're not afraid that we don't think we will ever completely run out of water, because we will manage that the best way we can. But we do communicate to the community, hey, it's a drought year. You might think about maybe not using as much water, just so we make sure we have enough water. Because as I have water in this cup, if I start drinking it as I've always drank it before, and I know I may not get to refill this cup until later in the year, I want to make sure I have a drink at the time I need it at the end of the year. So when we have a drought year, like we did a couple years ago, our reservoir will continually spill over the spillway until usually the first couple weeks of July. 2 years ago, when we enacted kind of the stage 1 drought restrictions, we initially anticipated the reservoir stopping the spilling over, so we're starting to draw down that reservoir in mid-May, so 2 months earlier, right? And when that happens, now we have to think, okay, when are we going to start filling that reservoir back up, right? When's this cup going to start filling up again? And sometimes the reservoir in a typical year will fill up in October. The end of October, you'll start getting some significant rains. But there have been years where it doesn't start filling up until December. So if you have one of those years where you start using your supply in May and you don't get to fill it up until December, those are scary years, right? Those are years I don't sleep well in October, November. But we just need to make the community aware that, hey, we may need some water down the road, so maybe don't use as much, right? Of course, that gets everyone all upset, What, we're gonna run out of water, we don't have enough water. No, we have plenty of water. We just wanna make sure we have enough water in the event that maybe we don't get, the rain coming later. I don't control the faucet, right? I don't know when I'm gonna turn it back on. If I did, I would have no problem, that'd be great. But let me say, we have an ample supply of water. Our watershed's amazing. Mercer Reservoir holds about 450 million gallons of water. Even in a drought year, we got down to about half full, right? So 2 years ago, we got down to half full. We usually get down to about half full in a normal year. So the citizens listened, they responded, they did well. We didn't use as much water as we normally would have in a normal year. And the rain came when it normally does, end of October. When our reservoir is half full and it starts to rain in like a normal winter, we fill that reservoir up in 2 weeks, right? I wish it only rained 2 weeks in Oregon, that'd be great. But as we all know, it rains for months. And so just imagine all the water that we could be holding, right, that we don't. So if this represents Mercer Reservoir, I could get about 20 more of the cups this size, put them on this table, and our watershed would fill up all 20 in a normal winter. And so this year, we probably could have filled up 30 because we had a lot more rain and snow. And so when you're out in the community and you hear people saying Dallas is going to run out of water, it's just not true. Okay? But we do need to build a new reservoir, and we need to build a bigger one. And so we've been working on that project for a long time. This storage line represents money that we need to start setting aside today so that when we go to construct this new reservoir, we're going to have money to put on the table. We're asking our federal partners, we're asking our state partners, get ready to give me a whole lot of money. This project is probably going to cost between, I would say, $75 and $90 million. Last year we put aside $600,000. This year we put aside another $700,000. Next year we're going to put a little over $1 million, $1.5 million. Year 3 of the rate increases, we'll be able to set aside $2 million per year towards this project. This project, once we do construct it, it's going to be a debt service project, meaning we're going to have to pay it back over many years from the federal government. And this rate increases that we imposed this year over the next 3 will pay that debt service payment. So again, the council was very proactive in thinking, how do we get this project done, paid for? Some money as a down payment, and then debt service payments after that. Michael, what did I miss?
Brian says we're not out of water, but from a city council perspective, we're out of water because one of our biggest generators of revenue is commercial and industry. If we brought a big industry back in, we would be out of water. When the mill shut down, they were using how much water?
1 million gallons of water a day.
We don't have that water. If we're going to bring industry back into our town to help supplement our revenues in a bigger way than houses do, because houses are a break even, we need industry and commercial. And so we need water. And that's why city council was so proactive on making sure that we went out and I shouldn't just say city council, it's not city council. City council and everybody that's sitting back there has done a great job as far as we're not the federal government. We're saving money for the future so that we can pay the debt that we're going to incur at a very, very low interest rate from the federal government, because those projects, interest wise, what interest rate?
They're usually between 1% and 2.5%.
So in my family, if it's 1.5%, 2%, I'd consider that on $50 to $60 million. That's pretty close to free money. I mean, if we can pay for it already in a fee that we've imposed and we're all used to paying, and it's going to cover that fee for the life of the paying off the debt. That's the only part you missed.
That's true. I thank you for bringing the rain cloud to the party. No, it's a true statement, right? If we want to grow our industrial tax base with a high water user, we need to have more water. We don't have water for them today. And so Charlie Mitchell, our Economic and Community Development Director, has done a great job at luring and bringing and attracting businesses here on the industrial side, job producing businesses that don't use a lot of water. Centec Engineering is the flagship model of that. They're a metal manufacturing company. They don't use hardly any water. Now they use a lot of power, which is awesome because you get more franchise fees, tax revenue, jobs that they come and spend money in our downtown and other places. But we're a niche industrial supplier of land right now because we don't have the water to bring in like a food processor, right? And they're always looking for land. And we have them sniff around Dallas and we say, come back in about 10 years because we'll have water. So, and we have made, I'll get your question in a minute. We have made application for our water right for the expanded impoundment of water. And once we secure that right, then we can start, going after, permits for construction and things like that. This is going to be a several-year-long process to get permits, even to construct. We anticipate there probably is going to be some litigation from, water watch groups and stuff like that. But you have to start somewhere. So I would say the city of Newport, they're also trying to replace their 2 dams, well, 1 dam with 2 dams. And they're, I think, on year 10 or 11. Now we're not on year 1. We're several years into this already, but it takes time, and so they're a lot closer to the finish line than we are. But we're dedicated to getting this project done, and this revenue and saving the money is a really good start. All right, now your question.
Is it true that even with the increases over the next 3 years? Next 3 years, our water fees are still kind of low to middle compared to our comparators, cities?
Yeah, so when staff took the fee increases to the council for consideration, the League of Oregon Cities does a really good job at a water survey. They do the survey every 2 years, and they look at, for fairness purposes, because everyone's water systems are a little bit different and how they charge is a little bit different. So what they do is they say, tell us how much it costs to sell 5,000 gallons of water, right? So it's a standard, this is how much water I want. Some people, sell units of water, some people do gallons. It's just different, it gets really muddy to calculate it. But if you just say 5,000 gallons of water, everyone, that participates in that survey, does their calculation, they submit their information. Dallas was significantly lower than the statewide average. For our regional average, we were even farther behind. And so with these 3 years of increases, it brought us up to par with the statewide average. We're still behind the average water for our region, the Willamette Valley region. And so even though our water customers are going to start paying, a lot more after the 3 years, it's better than probably what they would find anywhere else in the state.
Is that a statistic to bring up on the road trip? Because I feel like, as someone who's this is my first year on the committee, like, I am learning a lot. And it's really interesting and to see how these things are decided, where they go, all of that. I had two of my coworkers today that were complaining about their increase in their water, and I'm sitting here like, what increase? Because to me, I don't notice it. So I feel like something like that is really interesting to know. And like you said about bringing back industry, we're out of water. It's a very interesting thing. I think that more people should be aware of, or maybe not know or care to find that knowledge on their own if that's available on the website. So that would be, I think, a good thing to bring up.
Yeah.
On that tour.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so when we implemented these fee increases on the water side, the rate increases, we sent out a 2-page flyer in your water bill. You might have seen it, you might have just thrown it away. If you get an electronic bill, you probably didn't open your email from us. It's what it is. But it did a really good job, and it described that, and it showed those statistics to say, hey, here's where you were, here's where you are now after the 3 years, and you're right on par with everyone else in the state. And so you do your best to try to communicate that. I think on the road show, we're not going to necessarily talk about the enterprise funds. We're going to talk more about general fund, but we can tie in because the general fund is going to be better sustained long term with economic growth, and we can tie in, hey, we're saving money on the water. You might have seen rate increases so that we can attract industry with more water, and that's going to help the general fund. It'll be a loose connection. Yeah.
So I'm not an engineer, but I've gone out and I've talked to people in my community, and a lot of people have this common concern that as Dallas gets bigger, obviously there's going to be this, in their mind, a water shortage and a water flow problem. And they tell me that they start off with, let's take a number like 80% water flow, and you can really get by with probably 30 to 40%, but they're going to be going down to 60%. So are they paying more for less water?
They're paying more for the same amount of water, is the short answer. The rate increases are, every year that we impose a rate increase, if they use the same amount of water that they did the year before, they're going to pay more money. That answer, just doing math, would be true to a certain extent, right? And because if you use 50 gallons less each month, you're probably still going to pay a little bit more than you did the year before, just because the rate increase this year was more than it was in years past, right? I mean, years past, typically the rate increase has been, I think, a little around just over 4%. So if you reduce your water consumption by a little over 4%, you're probably paying the same for less water. But if you only reduce your water by 2%, you're paying more for less, right? I mean, it's a matter of math. But you're paying more for the same.
The overall concern is that Dallas is growing too big, too rapidly, in that the water source is just not going to be there for a lot of people. So how do I sell that to them?
I think the way of selling that is our water source is not too small, right? I mean, you can describe it as I did before, right? If you have a cup and say, this is our water storage right now, our water source is these giant mountains that are all around it that are some of the wettest mountains in all of Oregon. And I can fill up 20 of these cups with our water source. Problem is I don't have 20 cups to hold all that water. And so the council is actively trying to build a bigger cup so that you can hold more water, more of our source water. That's the answer, right? So, yeah.
I'm gonna just put in, I'm a numeric person. We're on the budget committee, numbers work better for me. Currently, I don't remember if it's 3%, we're just gonna call it 3%. We capture 3% of the water that we're allowed to capture. Brian said water rights. We have the right to 97% more water than we collect today. What we're going after is water storage rights. We don't have the right to store more water right now. That's a legal process we have to go through. So currently we're collecting 3. The new dam, we're gonna collect 12%. So are we gonna ever run out of water? No, we just have to build another dam. So, and is distribution going to be a problem? We were asked about oversizing pipes. That's what oversizing pipes is all about. The developer doesn't have to pay for the oversized pipe because by law, they only have to pay for the subdivision they're working on, but the city has foresight and knows that they have to oversize it. So you're not gonna run out of water. You're not gonna run out of pressure. In fact, most houses have pressure reducers on them. Is that okay? So 3%, 12%, we can still collect another 8%.
Yeah, and just to get to a little bit more of Councilor Schilling's point, we let a lot of water pass our water intake that we have the right to take. We just choose not to because we like having Rickerdale Creek flow water. We have enough water right to use that water that we could dry the creek at our intake if we needed to. We choose not to because we like our downstream, neighbors, farmers, and others that need that water as well. And so we voluntarily allow at least 500,000 gallons of water every day to flow past our intake that we don't have to. So, questions over here?
Not a question. I need home excuse. I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
The babysitter needs to go home.
We're gonna excuse. Can he be excused, Chair?
I think we can excuse that.
All right, good.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. We appreciate all your work.
So, yes on the dam, in relation to industry and commercial, where does, cause I thought you guys were working on a new treated water facility,
James Howe Road?
Yeah, James Howe Road. And then where does the treated water availability, the Purple Pipe project come in? Is that still something that's available based off of proximity to the water treatment plant? Are those things short-term fixes to try to bring some industry in, or are they not gonna make it?
Yeah, so I'll address each of those separately. Starting with so treated water storage. We have, I think, 5 or 6 tanks in the city right now of treated water where we store, after we collect it, treat it, we put it in the distribution system, and we store around the community in different areas. So we did buy some property off of James Howe Road. It's at the right elevation, 500 feet, where we're going to put a new a new tank. It's a 2 million gallon tank. 2 million gallons? 3 million gallons. I thought I was wrong. A 3 million gallon tank. And we've applied for funding through Business Oregon for that and have been promised that funding will be delivered. We're waiting for them to sell bonds before that money will come to us. But that's in the works to build that within the next few years. That will help with pressure issues and other things around Douglas and that neighborhood. And it'll help to fill in as the Wyatt Node area, the development over off James Howe Road gets all built out. And so that's a short-term solution for just some additional daily storage, right? Right now, the city can store, I think it's about 9 or 10 million gallons of treated water. In the summertime, on the high side, we use about 5 million gallons a day of water. And so adding 3 million gallons will help. So that we're not constantly refilling those tanks, right? We'll have a couple days worth of storage at the highest water use time, the highest demand time in the summer. And so, but that doesn't help like with long-term storage, like for months, right? That's just kind of your daily, every couple days storage. The Purple Pipe project is a project that was envisioned initially to take treated wastewater, so it had nothing to do with our water treatment plant, which is on the west side of the city. The wastewater is on the east side of the city. And so we were going to take treated wastewater and clean it and then reuse it for initially irrigation of some of our larger lawn areas that we have in the city. So our parks, like City Park, Roger Jordan Park, some of those other parklands. Now you can't, mix your treated wastewater with your drinking water, obvious. And so you would have to install a whole new distribution system to get that treated wastewater over to the parks. I don't think that was fully contemplated in the planning. And so when an industrial company like Mint Valley Paper, which was looking at us several years ago, thought, hey, we want to come and hey, we'd be happy to use the purple pipe water for their industrial processing. They were going to locate near our wastewater treatment facility, and it made perfect sense to kind of revision that project instead of for irrigation purposes, for industrial purposes. So we took plans that were maybe 50-60% complete, got them up to 100% complete plans, or at least 90% complete for an industrial user. So yes, we have the purple pipe project. It's shelf ready, so that's designed, it's ready to go for a certain property. But if we had an industrial user that needed and could use treated wastewater, we would pull that plant off the shelf and blow the dust off and then use it. I don't think we'll pull it off the shelf to use it for irrigation purposes, because we're going to be spending a lot of money, one, to build the system, and then also to get the distribution, and it'll take us a long time to pay that back. And if we did it for irrigation, it's on the backs of the citizens paying off that debt, instead of if you had an industry come in, they could, we could recover the cost for that debt service to build that project on the rates that they're paying for that treated wastewater. So I think the purple pipe is really for an industrial user. So if we had one that would use it, that'd be great. It wouldn't help us with like a food processor, because you don't want to have treated wastewater in your jams and jellies. But if you had like a paper processor, or some other manufacturing business that could use treated wastewater in their processing, that would be what we'd go after. So and we have that. Charlie has that in his tool belt as he goes out and works with different companies. All right, a few more points on the water fund, and then we can have any more deliberations or changes that you want to make to the budget, or approve some motions so we can all go home. Under the capital outlay, the Clay Street line rehabilitation project, we spent some money this year, mostly buying the materials and stuff. The installation of that project is going to carry over into the proposed fiscal year at $900,000. So the combined amount is the total cost of that project. That's being paid for, again, out of the water fund. And then you have a Clay Street reservoir project. We identified a pretty significant leak in one of our reservoir cells, and we need to get that fixed. The reservoir covers are floating covers, and so we have to take those off. They're at end of life, and so we just need to replace them. So we've been working with Business Oregon to get funding, and so the $2.2 million and the $2.4 million are not additive. We just didn't get the project done last year, so it got moved to this year. So that's $2.4 million. We did increase the price a little bit because of just inflation. But I just wanted to distinguish between those two projects. One is some money was spent this year, some next year, where the other one is money just being moved from last year, which wasn't spent, to this year, which is spent. And I think that's it for the water fund, unless you guys have other questions. All right, seeing no questions, congratulations. You listened to me for 3.5 hours. It's much more than my kids have ever done in their life. Again, it's really your opportunity as budget committee members to, if there's anything in here that you feel needs to be changed or is incorrect, now would be a good time to do that for deliberations. There's 2 recommended motions from the memo. They are here. You can certainly make those. Your work after making motions and approving a budget is done for a year. And I can't remember if any of you have terms expiring this year. So if not, we'll then see you all next year. And thank you. This has been a good process, and hopefully you've learned a lot today. So I'll turn the time back over to you, Chair Weston.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. It's really an amazing thing, but the City of Dallas has put together a budget document that's less than 100 pages. I'm sure in a few years it'll exceed 100 pages. But this year, we got by real good. It's only 95 pages. With that in mind, I'd like to hit a motion to approve and recommend that the council adopt the 2023-24 budget as has been presented and reviewed and amended and whatever else by the Budget Committee, and approve the use of state revenue sharing funds. I think we need those. So if somebody wants to make a motion, we'll entertain that.
So move.
Okay, it has been moved. How about a second? Second. And we have a second. Therefore, we get to vote.
Discussion.
If you want to discuss this, we can discuss it. Any discussion?
Yeah, this is your time to.
Go for it.
Sorry, I know everybody wants to go home. And I don't know that this is a point of deliberation, but I just want it on the record that Todd, I almost called you Chief, Todd Brumfield, I'm gonna echo the concern at delaying purchase of apparatus for the fire department. And I fully respect the process that we went through to make sure we had a balanced budget, but I do want to, I think that's a mistake.
I appreciate your saying that. Any further discussion? Yes.
On page 82, under grant fund revenue, I noticed that the police grant fund is really skinny compared to just about all the other grants. And I think we can do better than $34,000. And I'm talking about 9,000 that's carried over into the 2,500. Is there anything else that we can do to support our police?
Yeah, so and Tom's back here, so Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The police grant that's $2,500 is the bulletproof vest grant that we apply for and receive every year. The police department does apply for additional grants. They're just not listed on here. So not having a grant on here or even a placeholder of $5,000 doesn't preclude the city from applying for a grant. We're cognizant that we don't want to overinflate the budget, so we don't, we don't put like $50,000 or $100,000 grants in here that were aspirational that we might get. But not having a grant listed here or not having a placeholder doesn't preclude us from applying for one. And so Tom can attest that I send him grant opportunities for police all the time and say, what do you think about this one?
I think I just want to note it that it's a very skinny, and we need to support our police more than that.
I appreciate that comment. I just want to let you know that this isn't reflective of not supporting the police. It's just indicative of we're not putting in every grant opportunity that we might apply for.
Appreciate that too. Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second, and we've discussed a few things. Any further discussion? If not, we'll call for the question. All those in favor?
Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote just so we know how everyone votes.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Will the secretary call the roll and get the vote?
Council President Schilling.
Yes.
Counselor Adams.
Yes.
Counselor Barrientos.
Yes.
Counselor Collins.
Yes.
Counselor Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Counselor Jantz.
Yes.
Todd Brumfield.
Yes.
Matthew Seeples
Is excused.
Julie Kaprowski.
Yes.
Laura Monroe.
Yes.
Nicholas Peasley.
Yes.
Jessica Schuler.
Yes.
Rich Spofford.
Yes.
David Weston.
Yes.
Holly Williamson.
Yes.
It's passed.
Do we need to do a second?
It sounds as if it did. It passed. And with that in mind, I appreciate very much. We're going to carry on and ask now for us to approve a property tax rate of 14.1954 per $1,000 of assessed value.
Not quite.
Sorry.
That's one way to fix our general fund budget.
Did I say 14?
Yeah.
Well, it's supposed to be 4.19. You know, it's the same numbers.
Just a lot.
So
That's a rounding error.
4.1954 per 1,000 of assessed value.
So moved.
Who was that, Todd?
That was Todd.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? As long as it's not 14.
The only
we
thing
can
I
have
would
it.
mention is you can't have a tax rate that's larger, but you could always under levy and go with a tax rate that's smaller. That's allowable by state law. But if you want to go with a smaller tax rate, we're going to have to read the general fund budget.
Well, I was just being sure you were gonna be smaller. I thought 14 was helping you out, but that's okay.
Maybe the assessor won't notice.
City's made a lot of lights on it.
Yeah.
Are we also like now?
If there's no further discussion, we'll call for the vote. I guess we better do another roll call vote. Madam Secretary?
And who did the second? I missed that.
It
Thank
was
you,
Nick
Nicholas.
Beasley.
Okay, for the vote, Council President Schilling,
Yes.
Councilor Adams,
Yes.
Councilor Barrientos,
Yes.
Councilor Collins,
Yes.
Councilor Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Councilor Jantz,
Yes.
Todd Brumfield,
Yes.
Julie Kobrowski,
Yes.
Laura Monroe,
Yes.
Nicholas Peasley,
Yes.
Jessica Schuler,
Yes.
Rich Spofford,
Yes.
David Weston,
Yes.
Holly Williamson. Yes. And it's passed.
Okay, we're going to hear from the council president, some very pristine words we should all listen closely to.
Well, keep it short then, thank you. And really, that's what I'm doing, is I thoroughly appreciate each and every one of you and my fellow council members for being here and going over this. I thank Brian and the staff for the time that they've put in and the clarity of the budgets, and that we can read through it prior to coming and understand most of it, which is not the easiest thing in the past to have done. I appreciate the extra time that's involved in having those explanations. And last but not least, since you voted unanimously and you know so much more about the city, please talk about it. Please share about the water. Please share about the things. And second, tell about your experience. It was hopefully eye-opening a little bit, maybe a little boring, but maybe a little exciting at the same time, because you got to learn and become involved and recruit people for involvement into this process. And with that, thank you.
Thank you. I believe we've completed our mission, and as such, this meeting stands adjourned.
Thanks, Dave, for serving as chair. That's not the easiest job.
Oh, they told me I got twice as much money now.
We appreciated his humor.